Think for yourself. Question authority.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Now, as soon as 2020 started, I didn't expect it to start this quickly, but we already have on the 2nd of January talk of the new, more powerful Switch coming in 2020, as we've been discussing since 2018 or so, the midway half point of the year. And now we have industry insider and analyst Serkan Toto talking about new, more powerful Switch coming in 2020. He calls it a quote-unquote Switch Pro. And I'll read exactly what he said here in his predictions, and he has been right in the past, and he does have industry insider knowledge, by the way, so it sounds like he knows more than just guessing here. He's giving very exact information here, and it looks very similar to what I have also said myself on this channel as far as what I expect for this new Switch to be doing in 2020 as far as the pricing and what have you. But anyway, he says 2020 prediction, Switch Pro launch. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Nintendo will launch a Switch Pro, quote unquote, he puts it in quotes, in 2020. My guess is at $399. More specifically, I predict 4K support, bigger cartridge sizes, as we know that 64 gigabyte cartridges were just covered on this channel a few days ago actually, and of course beefed up components and better specs. I also think the device will launch after the summer holidays to counter the rollout of the PS5 and next-gen Xbox later in the year, along with a first-party system seller game. So that's interesting that he says that somewhere before the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X launches at the end of 2020. So that would put it probably sometime after E3, maybe around the September timeframe, just like how Nintendo did it with the Switch Lite. Now remember, last year in early 2019, it was reported by Nikkei, the Japanese publication, that Nintendo was in fact going to be releasing a new, more powerful Switch that was a full model upgrade from the original after the quote-unquote mini or light version of it. And that was nearly a year ago now that they reported that. So it makes sense that now Nintendo is getting ready to announce that new, more powerful Switch. Now, of course, there's been a lot of speculation and talk about this online. A lot of people have different opinions about it. Everyone is fine to have their opinions. You guys know exactly where I stand. If you haven't been following my channel, maybe you don't, but you should know where I stand on this. I do think it's coming this year, sooner rather than later. And I have said in this channel last year that I do expect it to be announced and released before the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X comes out. And Serkan Toto agrees with me here. So I also agree on the $399 price point and 4K support, not native 4K, not rendering 4K. Remember, 4K support just means plugging in your TV, your Switch to the TV basically, and having the TV output at 4K upscaling, basically recognizing that your system is doing 4K to the TV, but not actually rendering games at 4K. So 4K support is just standard, you know, all devices support 4K TVs. And bigger cartridge sizes, 64 gigabyte cartridges, I do expect that as well, as was reported that Nintendo is purchasing those cartridges. And it's not necessarily to combat PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, because I've heard all the arguments for years now, a couple years, ever since Switch launched. Oh, the Switch is not competing. The Switch doesn't need to have a new console so soon. It can wait until 2022 because it's not competing for 4K and 8K. Well, here's the funny thing about that line of reasoning, and it's pretty simple. Do you honestly think that the Switch 2, or the successor to the current Switch, is going to be competing at 4K and 8K as a mobile device in 2022 anyway? Now, the answer obviously is no, right? So there's not going to be any difference there as far as waiting 2 years and doing it right now. There is not going to be any mobile device, I don't care what company it is, that's going to be outputting at native 4K on the go, playing AAA games, or even 8K. They're not going to be doing that on the Switch or any other handheld device. What Nintendo wants to do, though, is to continue to get the current games that are on the market, the big selling games. They want to get those games on their platform. And they've proven it to you, the fans, that they want to have current gen AAA games. They have just not been able to get those games basically because the Switch current hardware is not able to run them in the way that a lot of developers are trying to run them on the other current gen systems like the PS4 and Xbox One, Xbox One X, whatever. The current gen games Nintendo has managed to get on the Switch have sold very well on the console. Mortal Kombat 11, best-selling game on the Switch in April 2019, AAA port. The Witcher 3, great selling game at the end of 2019 for the Switch. You have Overwatch coming to the Switch from the current gen as well. You have Doom and you have Wolfenstein 2 on the Switch. You know, not all the games, obviously, from the current generation. It's still missing quite a bit, but some key titles was shown that Nintendo does want to have these games on their platform going forward. So what happens is that when you go into the next generation of consoles, then at that point, the current Switch will basically have no chance of getting those games until they release a new piece of hardware. And yet again, Nintendo will not be competing with 4K or 8K either way, guys. So there's no point in waiting until 2022. It makes perfect logical sense, just as Serkan Toto says, that Nintendo will be releasing this upgraded Switch this year. And of course, the big reason to have this new upgraded Switch would be to not only get games from third parties, but also to continue momentum of your platform sales and drive new sales to the platform so that Nintendo continue to make what? Well, continue to make that money that they have been making with the Switch so far. We know Nintendo's not competing with that extreme high fidelity 8K, 4K resolution stuff either way. We know that. So either way, they're going to have to release a new, more powerful Switch to get these games, to get these ports. They've proven to you, the fans, that they do want these games in their system, and they've stated time and time and again they want all games to be on their Switch platform. But of course, developers haven't been able to port those games to the Switch, even from PlayStation 4 currently as it is, a lot of those games. In 2019, the Switch has been missing Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which is the game of the year, Jedi Fallen Order, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and the list goes on and on and on throughout the year. Devil May Cry 5, those are just off the top of my head. Resident Evil 2 Remake. The Switch has been missing out on those big games, some even nominated for Game of the Year, Control even as well, which, you know, some have a question about that, but that's another Game of the Year candidate that has missed out on Nintendo's platform. And on top of that, that is a lot of money missed out on royalties Nintendo makes from selling those games to you, the consumer. The more that you go spend your money on PlayStation and Xbox, the less money Nintendo gets on their ecosystem. And it puts more pressure on them in turn to release more first-party games and more first-party games and more first-party games because they can't keep up with the releases of the other consoles because they're not getting the AAA third-party support as much as they need to. And they proved it that it can be successful on Nintendo's platform with the great sales of games like we talked about, Mortal Kombat 11, leading the system in sales April 2019. Very good eye-opener too for fans and for developers that they can be successful on Nintendo's platform for third-party AAA. So it's been quite a while since Nintendo has had the support from AAA developers, and they're just starting to get it right now. So do you really think they're going to just sit there and wait for 2 more years, over 2 years, like the end of 2022 or whatever holiday of that time frame, to release their next Switch that still won't even be competing with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X as a portable device? Do you really think they're going to do that? It's extremely slim to none chances that they will. And on top of that, remember, we talked about this in the live stream last month, that Nintendo has no backup, really. There's no backup console to support them if the current Switch hardware sales drop, including the Switch Lite. The Switch Lite is not a backup support for the Switch. The Switch Lite is the Switch. And it's actually not selling as well as the Switch OG because, quite frankly, the Switch Lite isn't quite as good of a value, even at $200 compared to the Switch OG, with the portability aspect and being able to play on the TV and the Joy-Cons included with it. The Switch OG is just a far better value than the Switch Lite. So if the Switch OG sales fall, there's no support. There's no backup support for the console to increase its sales. Because as you know, when consoles really start dying and dropping their sales really, and it becomes a pattern, and then it becomes really hard for those companies to bring their sales back up again with just releasing more games. Eventually, you do have to release new hardware to continue getting games that are impressive on your platform to draw more consumers to your platform. Because think about it this way, if Nintendo wanted to remain not competing, quote unquote, then they would have stayed with the Nintendo Wii and just not upgraded anything, not upgraded the specs, and just expected developers to make their games for the blue ocean strategy that eventually, fizzled out and people were not buying their games anymore, and just say, hey, we don't have to upgrade, we're not competing, we're Nintendo, we can make Nintendo games. While there's nothing wrong with the Wii games per se, at 480p, you had Super Mario Galaxy, you had Metroid Prime 3, some great games in the Wii, but there's a reason why companies upgrade. And there's a reason why they upgrade their specs. And there's a reason why they have these meetings with developers behind closed doors. And there's a reason why they make deals for exclusive games on their consoles. And there's a reason why developers try to make games look really pretty. And the reason for all these things is because gamers like those things. They like having good looking games. They like having the newest games. They like having the most games. They like having a wide variety of selection of games on their platform. That is why consoles continue to get upgraded, continue to have new releases on them, continue to have, previews of new games, continue to have improvements on graphics, frame rate, what have you, because that's what draws in the big money for gamers. As much as Nintendo fans want to believe that graphics aren't everything, graphics are actually one of the number one things that gamers look for in the games of today, basically. They look at how good the graphics are. They look at if it's the newest and latest of a certain, favorite series that they have. If your console is not getting those games, like Call of Duty, for example, you're missing out on so much money, and it puts more pressure on you, in this case Nintendo, to release more and more games at a faster pace. And it's led to a lot of Wii U ports, and it's led to a lot of games that are just, quite frankly, not quite as high as quality as they used to be when Nintendo had more time to devote to release these games at a more spaced out rate, because they had more AAA third-party support back in those days, basically. So with the Nintendo Switch, the reason why you're seeing so many more first-party games on the console is because of that reason. Nintendo's not getting a lot of these big games from the other companies. They are getting some of them, and they're just starting to now, you see. But they are getting a ton of indie games. There's no shortage of games on the Switch. I think there's almost like 3,000 games on the Switch currently, which is insane. But a ton of indie games and a lot of shovelware on the Nintendo Switch eShop, as I'm sure you know. Now, if Nintendo continues that narrative and just waits till 2022 to release their next Switch that is still not competing, mind you, then all they're doing is just prolonging the inevitable that they still want to get those games either way. So if they don't release a new Switch this year, they're not going to be getting those games, those ports from AAA third-party developers for another 2 years at least. And then maybe they'll start getting games in 2022. We don't know for sure, because by that time, developers and third parties will be fully invested already into PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. And if Nintendo wants to get those games, they'll be coming in last to try to convince them to port those games over to their next console, when they could be doing that right now, which most likely they already have been doing. We've heard rumors and reports that Nintendo has been talking to developers behind the scenes as far back as September of 2018 at TGS, talking to developers most likely about new hardware coming in the future. And of course, we covered all of it on this channel as well. So now we have Serkan Toto, and the reason why this is very legit, I think, is because of how exact he is on his predictions here. And he does have contacts in the industry that are aware of certain supply and production components that are being shipped to these manufacturers and to these companies like Nintendo, for example. Most likely he's aware of two things currently going on behind the scenes, and that would be the sharp IGZO displays being shipped to Nintendo for their new, more powerful Switch to be used, which is why he said 4K support, and the cartridges, which are also being purchased and shipped to Nintendo by Macronix for the 64GB cartridges, which also leads to him saying that they'll have bigger cartridge sizes, and also the higher price is in line with also that 4K screen with the IGZO display. It all makes sense as to why he's saying these things, and on top of it, he says there's absolutely no doubt in his mind. Remember, in 2019, he made a similar prediction. He said the Switch Lite, he actually named the Switch Lite correctly in his prediction in the beginning of 2019, and the Switch Pro would be released in 2019. Now, the Switch Pro did not come out in 2019, we know that, But in 2019, he was less sure about the Switch Pro being released, but more sure about the Switch Lite, which he was dead on correct on. And most likely from what we've been seeing here from all the information we've gone over on this channel, is that Nintendo has been continuing to work on this new, more powerful Switch, on the operating system. Most likely, since Nintendo knows now that next gen isn't coming till the end of 2020, they felt like they had a little bit more time to work on this new, more powerful Switch. Henceforth, with all the production going on behind the scenes, it makes sense now that Serkan Toto is chiming in and being extremely exact with his prediction here, like extremely exact, that he 100% expects this to be released not only in 2020, but before the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, because Nintendo wants what? They want games. It's not about waiting till 2022 because they have to for some reason, because they're not competing with those companies either way, guys. So you got your console now coming out in 2020, release it, continue to get games, and build up what you started with the current Switch ecosystem by getting AAA ports, even more so going forward, because you started it now. You're not going to just stop all of a sudden, wait for 2 years to get ports. You're going to continue to do it now and continue to drive up more install base, more users, and more success for your company by getting all these games on your platform going forward. So that's where I stand on this, guys. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section. It's a really hot topic going on today. But one thing was for sure, when I tweeted out that information about this new Switch coming in 2020, the fans were extremely excited, way more excited than I was expecting. I got over like almost 600 likes on my tweet that I put out there about this new, more powerful Switch. I mean, fans want this console to come. So, you know, I think you're going to get it. I think we're going to be having fun this year with it, and we're going to be playing some really great games on a new Nintendo console very soon. All right, guys, if you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button, subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Take care.